Very important
Vrlo je važno
that we are listening not so much to me because my ideas may not be correct at all.
Nije važno toliko mene slušati jer možda moje ideje nisu najtočnije.
But it is very important that we listen to Jesus as he speaks to us and as the Holy Spirit convicts and works in our hearts.
Nego da slušamo Duha Svetoga koji će raditi našim srcima i koji će nas uvjeriti u istinu.
And as I wrote an email, it's important that throughout the week we are reading the passage and thinking, listening to what the Holy Spirit is saying to us from these words.
Kao što sam je navela u e-mailu, želim da do sljedećeg sata i uvijek kontinuirano čitate retke koje smo proučavali prošle puta i da čujete glas Duha Svetoga.
The amazing thing is that what we heard from God yesterday from a passage of Scripture may not be the same thing that we hear today because the Word is living, active, and sharp.
Možda ćete se začuditi da je Božja riječ toliko predivna da ono što ste jučer čuli nije isto ono što ćete danas čuti od Duha Svetog i Božja riječ je oštrija od dvosjekog mača.
And I am convinced the Holy Spirit wants to speak to our hearts as we listen to the words of Jesus.
Ja sam uvjeren da Duh Sveti želi govoriti našim srcima kada ga slušamo.
And so as you looked at the passage last week and perhaps throughout this week, if you heard something or something came to mind and you're willing to share that with us in response to any of the 4 questions that we always share, I hope you'll be willing to spend just a moment or two to share that with us.
I volio bih ako ste pročitali te retke, ako imate odgovore možda na ona 4 pitanja ili neka razmišljanja, bit ću voljela vas poslušati i možemo provesti neko vrijeme odgovarajući na njih.
But before we get into that,
ali prije nego što krenemo na to,
I want to do 2 things. I want to listen to the psalmist as he has, I think, a very important word for us. At least it has been an important word for me this last week.
Prije nego krenemo, htio bih čuti nešto iz psalma, htio bih pročitati psalam, bar je meni nešto bilo značajno iz tog psalma i vjerujem da će biti vama večeras.
So Davron is going to read for us Psalm 37, beginning with verse 3 down through verse 8.
I Davron će čitati psalm 37 od 3 pa nadalje.
Listen very carefully.
Slušajte vrlo pažljivo.
To what God has to say.
Ono što vam Bog ima za reći.
U Gospodina se uzdaj i čini dobro, da smiješ stanovati u zemlji i živjeti u miru. Sva radost tvoja neka bude Gospodin, on će ispuniti želje tvog srca. Prepusti Gospodinu putove svoje, u njega se uzdaj i on će sve voditi. Pravda će tvoja zasjati ko svjetlost i tvoje pravo ko sunce podnevno. Smiri se pred Gospodinom i njemu se nadaj. Ne žesti se na onoga koji ima sreće, na čovjeka koji spletke kuje. Stišaj svoj gnjev i ostavi se srdžbe, ne žesti se da zlo ne učiniš.
So here are the imperatives, here are the challenges that God lays before us.
Evo nekih izazova koje Bog stavlja pred nas.
First, trust in the Lord.
Prvo, vjerujte Bogu.
Everything about the Christian faith, everything about our walk in the Lord,
sve u vezi kršćanske vjere, sve u vezi tog hoda s Bogom,
must come from a heart and a mind and a life that's willing to trust God.
Dolazi iz srca, iz misli života koji je spreman podložiti se Kristu.
But then the next instruction, challenge, command is to delight yourself in the Lord.
A sljedeća zapovjed je da se radujemo u Gospodinu.
As I looked at the passage last week that we studied last week, as I thought about it during the week, and I thought about the Lord's Prayer.
Kad sam gledao u te retke, razmišljao sam o molitvi Oče naš.
And when Jesus taught us to pray, he taught us to pray, Our Father.
Kad nas Isus učio moliti, on nas je učio moliti Oče naš.
Fathers delight in their children.
Otac se raduje u svojoj djeci.
I read this passage again and I thought about my father, how much he enjoyed my children, his grandchildren.
Kada sam čitao te retke, prisjetio sam se kako se moj otac radovao meni, mojoj djeci, unucima.
Nothing gave him greater pleasure than watching his grandchildren.
Ništa mu nije predstavljalo veće zadovoljstvo od toga da gleda svoje unuke.
And sometimes we fathers are so busy wanting to train and correct and help our children that we don't step back and just enjoy them.
I ponekad smo mi očevi toliko zauzeti, želimo trenirati, pomoći, učiti svoju djecu, da ne iskoračimo i počnemo se radovati zapravo sa svojom djecom.
I'm convinced our Father delights in us.
Ja sam uvjeren da se naš otac raduje nama.
And the psalmist says to us, his children, delight yourself, enjoy your relationship with your Father.
I psalam kaže nama, otac u njima kaže svoj djeci, želim se radovati u vama.
And then the next challenge is to commit your way to the Lord.
I sljedeći izazov je da se podložimo, da se povjerimo Gospodinu.
I've been reminded this last week
Prisjetio sam se prošlog tjedna
that it is sometimes much easier to commit our way to myself and try to commit that to others than to just commit our way to the Lord.
Prisjetio sam se da je nekada lakše se podložiti sam sebi ili ostalima nego što se to Gospodinu.
You see, it is the Lord who really wants to direct our paths.
Zapravo Gospodin želi upravljati našim putevima.
He's the one that determines our way.
On je taj koji određuje naš put.
So our challenge is to commit our way to the Lord. Give it to Him and let Him do with it what He will.
Naš izazov je da dopustimo Bogu da kroz nas ostvari svoju želju.
And perhaps one of the most difficult things to do of all is what the psalmist says now. He says, wait on the Lord.
Možda jedan najteži dio u kojem govori psalmista da svoj put ostavimo Gospodinu.
I've spent a great deal of my life, I have to honestly say, telling God to hurry up.
Moram vam priznati da sam većinu svog života pokušavao ubrzati Gospodina.
Hurry up and do what I want you to do.
Htio sam da on požuri ono što ja želim učiniti.
Hurry up and give me answers to my questions.
Htio sam da požuri i da mi da odgovore na moja pitanja.
But the psalmist tells me to wait on the Lord.
Ali psalam mi kaže da čekam na Gospodina.
We don't want to run ahead of Him. We don't want to lag behind Him. But we just need to wait, to be still, and let the Lord direct our paths.
Ne želimo biti iza njega, ni protiv njega, nego se radovati u njemu, čekati na njega.
I share that with you because the Lord's been sharing that with me.
Ovo dijelim sa vama jer je Gospodin to podijelio sa mnom.
Let's pray.
Pomolimo se.
Father, and thank you, Father, that it's not just, you're just not my Father, but you are our Father, and we are a community of faith.
Hvala ti, Oče, da ti nisi samo moj otac, nego si naš otac i hvala ti da smo mi zajednica vjerni.
Thank you.
Hvala ti.
Thank you for these, my brothers and sisters, who have come to share and learn together what Jesus says.
Hvala ti na braći i sestrama koji su došli naučiti i podijeliti onome što Isus treba nas naučiti.
I so pray that you will open our ears and our hearts and our minds to hear what you have to say to us.
Hvala ti što ćeš otvoriti naše uši, srca i naše misli prema onome što nam ti želiš poručiti.
Thank you.
Hvala ti.
In the name of Jesus, amen.
U Kristovo ime molimo, amen.
Okay, now, give you this opportunity. You don't have to share.
Ova
But
prilika, ne trebate svi podijeliti.
as you looked at this passage that we talked about last week, including the Lord's Prayer,
Ali kad gledate u retke koje smo podijelili i na
so the truth is it's more about the heart than it is about what we do.
više stvar srca nego ono što mi zapravo činimo.
And it's all about the motive behind what we do.
I važan je motiv iza onoga što činimo.
Does that make sense?
Da li to ima smisla?
Okay, it's time to... Now, I was eager to talk to her, and so I turned the water on in the bathtub. I was going to run a bath for myself.
Tada sam otvorio vodu u kadu kako bi se posvjetuširao.
But I started talking to her on the telephone.
Ali počeo sam razgovarati s njom preko telefona.
And I was so absorbed in just listening to her and talking to her that I forgot all about the bathtub.
Tako sam bio u razgovoru sa njom i pričao dugo i pozorno je slušao da sam zaboravio da nisam ugasio vodu u kupovnici.
And so the water overflowed the bathtub.
Tako da je voda izašla iz kade.
I still was not paying attention. I was so absorbed in talking to my sweetheart.
Ja i dalje nisam obraćao pažnju na vodu i dalje sam razgovarao sa svojim samom.
And it continued to flow.
I poplava se nastavila.
Through the ceiling.
Kroz plafon čak.
Onto the antiques.
Sve do tog dućana ispod nas.
Up they came. Turn the water off, they said.
I napokon rekli su, isključi vodu.
You see, the truth is,
Istina je,
I wanted to spend time with my beloved because I loved her.
Istina je da sam htio provesti vrijeme sa svojom voljenom jer sam ju volio.
That cost me some money too. Let me ask you,
Ali dajte da vas pitam,
you say that you love God.
kažete da volite Boga.
Have you ever spent so much time with Him that the water overflowed?
Da li ste ikada proveli toliko vremena s njim da je voda izašla van, da je poplavila?
Now you understand I'm speaking just as a figure of speech here.
Razumijete li o čemu ovdje govorim?
Or, I have a friend, I've told the story before. He is one who has been very influential with the International Church of Christ.
Već sam prije ispričala priču o prijatelju koji je bio vrlo utjecajna osoba u međunarodnoj crkvi.
As a young Christian, even as a preacher, he loved to go fishing, and he paid for a beautiful boat. He had all kinds of wonderful fishing equipment.
On je volio ići u ribolov i kupio je veliki lijep brod i svu opremu.
It's his testimony that from reading this passage, the Holy Spirit convicted him that the truth is he loved fishing more than he loved the Lord.
No, kroz retke koji su mu značajno promijenili život, Duh Sveti ga je uvjerio da mu je ribolov važniji od Boga.
Because just if over a year's time, if he compared what he spent on his fishing hobby with what he spent in kingdom work, he spent far more in fishing equipment.
Ali kad je usporedio koliko je radio za kraljevstvo i koliko je tamo ulagao sa ribolovom, shvatio da je više vremena provodio u ribolovu.
And he said what hurt him even worse was that he spent more of his thinking time about fishing than he did thinking about the Lord.
Ono što je bilo najgore, da je više vremena proveo razmišljajući o ribolovu nego što je to razmišljao o Bogu.
Now what he said is, I had to do something very radical for myself.
Rekao je, moram učiniti nešto vrlo radikalno za sebe.
He said, I'm not asking anybody else to do this.
Rekao je, ne želim da nitko drugi to učini umjesto mene.
But his testimony was that I had to sell my boat, sell my fishing equipment, and walk away from fishing for a while just to give my time and invest my resources, money, mind, time in kingdom work rather than fishing work.
Svjedočanstvo je da je za neko vrijeme trebao prodati brod, ribolovsku opremu i sve ostalo i to vrijeme investirati u kraljestvo Božje.
So, again, I'm not suggesting that you have to go and sell everything, or in fact we're going to talk about what Jesus is not saying in this passage.
Ja vama ne predlažem da trebate prodati sve, zapravo vidjet ćemo što Isus vam govori ovdje.
But the question is, and when we think about what we invest in, it exposes really what we genuinely love.
Ali kada razmišljamo ono što ulažemo, to će izazvati na to da zaista vidimo gdje nam je srce.
These things
Ove stvari
are addictive.
su nekad i ovisne. Ovisni smo o njima.
I've had to think about how much do I really love Facebook.
Ja sam morala razmisliti koliko volim Facebook.
Yesterday's phone isn't quite good enough. I have to get the new one that comes out.
Mobitel koji je jučer bio dobar nije dovoljno dobar. Trebao bih imati novi model.
Now, I don't, because the truth of the matter is I don't like to spend money on anything.
Zapravo ja ne, zato jer ja ne volim trošiti novac na ništa.
But you understand what I'm saying.
Ali razumijete što želim reći.
Or automobiles, whatever.
Ili neki troši na automobile.
Now let's come back to what Jesus says.
Vratimo se onome što je Isus govorio.
He says, where you invest, where your treasure is, that's where your heart will be.
Isus je rekao, gdje investirate, to je zapravo vaše pravo blago.
Where you invest, where you invest and what your true treasure is reveals your heart.
Ono što je vaše pravo blago, otkriva vaše srce. I gdje investirate, otkriva vašu aktivnu ljubav.
Where you invest reveals your active love.
Znači, gdje investirate, to otkriva vašu aktivnu ljubav.
Not your emotional love, necessarily.
Ne vašu emocionalnu ljubav, nego vašu djelotvornu, aktivnu ljubav.
Can I be a bit more personal?
Htio bih biti nešto osobniji s vama.
Before I go on with this,
Prije nego nastavim s ovim.
students and those who are working toward diplomas and degrees,
Studenti, oni koji rade da dobiju diplome,
and again, I'm only speaking from experience about time.
I ponavljam, ja samo govorim o svom iskustvu.
There have been times when I was a student and sometimes as a preacher that I have been so busy with my studies and loving my studies or loving the pulpit or loving my preaching so much that I did not spend time with God.
Bilo je vrijeme kada sam bio student i kada sam studirao, da sam se previše zadubio u studiranje i volio sam učenje. Ili primjerice kad sam bio propovjednik i kad sam bio za propovjedovalnicom, to sam volio više od Boga.
Okay. Having said that, let's think a little bit about the passage itself.
Kad sam sada vam ovo ispričao, želim da sad pogledamo retke.
What Jesus is forbidding for his disciples is the selfish accumulation of stuff.
Ono što Isus zabranio svojim učenicima je sebična akumulacija stvari.
The world thinks, there's a fantasy that says that a person's life consists of how much stuff he can accumulate.
Svijet kaže i fantazira da se život osobe sastoji od obilja njegovih posjeda.
Particularly in the world around about us, and the truth is we can become infected with this.
Pogotovo svijet oko nas i to može se odraziti na nas same.
Materialism can really tie one's heart to the earth.
Materializam zaista može povezivati čovjekove srce sa zemljom.
There was a bishop, an English bishop in the Church of England, who was being shown a beautiful new estate in England.
Bio je biskup u engleskoj crkvi kojemu je bilo pokazano what was shown to him?
And after he got to walking around the grounds and going through the building,
I kad je išao u zgradu i gledao je sve oko zgrade,
the owner asked the bishop, "What did you think of my place?"
I vlasnik je pitao biskupa, što misliš o mojoj zgradi?
He said, "My, all of this stuff makes it hard for a man to die.
I on kaže, sve ove stvari održavaju čovjeku da umre.
Don't want to turn loose of all that stuff.
Ne želi čovjek nekad izgubiti sve stvari.
Jesus is talking about the hard-heartedness that does not see the needs of the world's underprivileged.
Isus govori o teškom srcu koje ne vidi potrebe najsiromašnijih ljudi u svijetu.
The passage does not say that things are bad.
Redak ovdje ne govori da su stvari loše.
He does not say that money is bad.
Ne kaže da je novac loš.
What he's talking about, he says, do not lay up for yourselves
On kaže da ne sabiremo sami za sebe.
treasures on earth.
Da ne sabiramo blaga na zemlji.
He's talking about being covetous.
On govori o tome da smo pohlepni.
It's like the miser who hoards and does not want to turn loose.
To je kao bjednik koji gomila i koji ne želi to izgubiti.
Or it's like the materialist who always wants more. It's never enough. It's never good enough. I need the new one.
Ili to su kao materialisti koji uvijek žele više, nikada nije dovoljno dobro ili dovoljno novo.
Jesus is talking about spending your resources on you and yourself rather than on kingdom.
Isus ovdje govori da kada trošimo svoje resurse samo na sebe, a kada ne trošimo na kraljevstvo.
And I've used the term resources instead of money, though Jesus is specifically talking about money.
Ja ovdje koristim izraz resursi, iako Isus isključivo priča o novcu ovdje.
Because all that God has given us, whether it is time, ability, money, house, automobile, whatever it is, that's our resource to be used in kingdom work.
Jer sve što nam je Bog dao, vrijeme, posjete, automobile, sposobnosti, sve to trebamo koristiti za njegovu slavu.
Now, when Jesus gives these two illustrations, one about where moths eat and where this text says rust begins to corrupt.
Kada Isus dao primjer gdje moljac i hrđa pojedu stvari,
Jesus was talking about three realities that people in Palestine really did understand.
Isus je ovdje govorio o 3 realnosti koje zaista nisu bile dobro shvaćene.
First, he says where moths eat.
Prvo rekao kada moljac pojede sve.
In that culture, in that time, in fact, even before the time of Jesus, often a man's wealth was demonstrated by the clothes he had.
U ono vrijeme, u Isusovo vrijeme, bili ste onoliko bogati i moglo se to primijetiti na odjeću koju ste nosili.
Precious clothes, and so you would accumulate them and put them aside.
Odjeća je bilo toliko dragocjena da su je ljudi akumulirali, skupljali i stavljali sa strane.
Jesus said, that's not going to last because the moths can get in there and eat them and destroy the clothes.
Isus je rekao, to ne može trajati, mojci će doći na odjeću, pojesti će je i uništiti.
And then often they tried to store grain, particularly a rich man would build bigger barns to put his grain in.
I tada su bogati ljudi isto htjeli skladištiti, skupljati žito.
But they really knew that there was a problem. This word that is translated rust in the English word actually means eaten.
Ali ta riječ ovdje koja znači moljac, zapravo znači pojedeno, kada je izjedeno.
And so it could be anything that would eat up the grain. Worms, rats, varmints of all kinds. They would creep in and destroy all of the grain. Even what they didn't eat, they would destroy the rest.
To se može odnositi i na hranu. Sve što bi moljci došli bi uništili, više ne bi bilo za uporabu.
And often the houses that people had were just made out of dried mud.
I često kuće koje su ljudi imali su bile napravljene od suhog blata.
And so a man might accumulate gold or silver or something, and he would put it in some safe place in his house.
I ljudi su akumulirali srebro i zlato i stavili u svoje kuće na neko sigurno mjesto.
But it was not unusual for a thief just to dig through the mud wall and get to the stuff.
Ali nije bilo neobično da bi se lopov ušuljao kroz blatne prozore ili vrata i ušao i pokrao to.
What Jesus was saying is that stuff, whether it's cloth or grain or gold or silver or whatever you can put your hands on, it's just not permanent.
Ono što je Isus ovdje govorio, da stvari poput odjeće, žita, bilo koji drugih stvari nisu trajne.
I know that computers aren't permanent.
Ja znam da kompjuteri nisu trajni.
I mean, with all the new programs, you've got to buy a new computer that's faster and so forth to handle the programs.
Danas imamo toliko ubrzanu tehnologiju da kada imate kompjuter trebate stalno kupovati nove aplikacije i programe i nekad trebate kupiti brži kompjuter.
And last year's Apple will, you just have to stand in line and get the new one.
Prošle godine recimo Apple morali ste biti u korak s vremenom i kupiti novi.
Or perhaps it's a house.
Ili na primjer kuća.
Sandra and I love our home.
Sandra i ja volimo svoj dom.
So much of tonight's message is very confessional. I like to work in my yard. Sandra likes it even more.
Da budem iskren, ja volim raditi u svom dvorištu, svom vrtu, a Sandra to voli još više.
Those who have been there know I like to build walls. Ivan helped me build some of those walls.
I oni koji su bili kod mene vidjeli su da ja volim raditi i volim graditi neke zidove. Ivan je bio kod mene i to vidio.
But you know what? An earthquake could happen right up there and that whole thing could collapse.
Ali znate što? Potres može vrlo brzo stići i sve se može srušiti.
We used to live on the Gulf Coast and we knew people who had nice homes but a hurricane destroyed the whole thing.
Kad smo prije živjeli u blizini obale, znali smo da hurikan može brzo doći i da može uništiti stvari.
What Jesus is simply saying is that the stuff of this world may be okay, but if that's where your heart is, if that's what your investment is in, your primary investment, it could all go away in a moment.
Isus ovdje kaže da su stvari u redu, ali ako stalno investiramo u njih, moramo znati da one brzo mogu otići.
And there's a rather earthly proverb that says, there are no pockets in a burial shroud.
Postoji jedna izreka koja kaže da nema žepa koji se može toliko napuniti.
Because you just can't take it with you.
I ne možete to uzeti sa sobom.
Turn that off for a second. Then he says, what you need to do is invest for treasures in heaven.
Rekao je, trebate ulagati u stvari na nebu.
So I wonder what those treasures are. He really doesn't tell us.
Pitamo se što su ta blaga, ne ide dalje i ne kaže nam točno.
I thought about some things and I put them on the slide.
Razmišljao sam o nekim stvarima i stavio sam ih na slajd.
But the question is, how do we invest for treasures in heaven?
Pitanje je kako ulažemo za blaga na nebu.
Turn it off again because we're going to hear from the group. What do you think of kind of a treasury of merit? Somehow if I do something good, then God's going to keep a record of that and I've got one good point.
To nije doktrina zasluga, ako nešto učinimo dobro za Boga, on će nam to vratiti.
The Roman Catholic doctrine of treasury of merit, somehow that earns our salvation or keeps our salvation. That's just not what the New Testament teaches.
Rimokatolička doktrina kaže da trebamo zaslužiti svoje spasenje, ali to nije ono što pismo govori.
That violates the whole idea of grace.
To se ne slaže sa cijelom idejom o milosti.
Jesus is speaking to disciples who already have a relationship with Jesus.
Isus govori s učenicima koji već imaju odnos s njime.
But he's telling us, Jesus followers, that we are to invest in the kingdom that we might have treasures in heaven. So what else might that look like?
On govori nama, učenicima, što trebamo investirati da bismo baštinili Kraljestvo Božje.
I mean, in your life, now, in Zagreb.
Što to znači u vašim životima ovdje, upravo sada, u Zagrebu?
How do we make investment for treasures in heaven?
Gdje ulažemo za...
Be sending these disciples out to proclaim the kingdom.
Jer uskoro dalje u recima vidjet ćemo da će poslati učenike da govore o njegovom kraljestvu.
But perhaps it's also the development of a Christ-like character, as that Darwin is suggesting.
Ali baš kao što je Davarin prije predložio, trebamo razvijati Kristovi karakter.
To grow in the grace and the knowledge of God so that I can know Him better, so that I can enjoy Him even more in this earth, at this time, and for all eternity.
Trebamo rasti u spoznaji Boga kako bismo naučili više o njemu sada i kako bi se to odrazilo na kraljstvo.
To grow mentally and in the heart, and learning to do activities that make God smile, surely that's investing in the kingdom.
Trebamo rasti mentalno i u srcu kako bi stavili osmijeh na Božje lice. Da, to je baš trajno investiranje.
And then when I read this passage, I got to share about a friend I have who invests in the institute.
Tada kada sam čitao te retke, posjetio sam se prijatelja koji je ulagao u Biblijski institut.
But not just the institute, but missionaries and people and all over the world. He told me some time ago, he said, you know, God has given me the gift, the ability to make money.
On nije samo investirao u institut, nego i u razne službe i rekao mi je, Bog mi je dao sposobnost da dajem.
He said, I almost can't help it. He said, I just make money.
Ne mogu si pomoći, ja samo zarađujem novac.
But he said, I come to realize that God has enabled me to make money so that I can give it away and invest in the kingdom.
Ali je rekao da mu je Bog dao sposobnost da zarađuje novac kako bi blagoslovio druge za kraljstvo.
And so every year there's a significant amount of what he has earned that goes into the development of this institute.
Tako da svake godine postoji veliki dio koji on zaradi i daje za institut.
And he's personally supporting a missionary couple in Slovenia.
I on osobno također podržava par koji služi u Sloveniji.
And he and his wife are personally supporting several missionaries in South America.
I taj par dalje također isto investira u službenika u Africi.
And then he would be embarrassed if I were talking about this, but he said, God has given me the ability to earn money so that I can invest in the kingdom financially.
On bi se možda sramio da ovo dijelim sa vama, ali rekao je, Bog mi je dao sposobnost da mogu investirati novac u Božje kraljstvo.
I think surely it can be that too.
Mislim da je to također važno.
Now, I've spent too much time with us. Let's break for coffee, and then I got two other very important things to share with you. Let's have coffee. Jesus says the eye is the lamp of the body.
Isus kaže da je oko svjetljika tijela.
If your eyes are good, your whole body is full of light.
Ako je vaše oko dobro, vaše cijelo tijelo je u svjetlosti.
If your eyes are bad, then your whole body is full of darkness.
A ako je vaše oko u tami, vaše cijelo tijelo je u tami.
If then the light within you is darkness, how great indeed is the darkness.
I kako je snažno to svjetlo koje rasvjetava tu tamu u vama.
This is a strange thing to say when he's been talking about investing in eternal things, and in a moment he's going to talk about money specifically.
Ovo je možda čudna stvar kada govori o ulaganju.
So I wonder what in the world is this about?
I onda se pitao što ovdje on zapravo pokušava reći.
And I've read, I guess I read 6 different commentaries about this.
I pročitali sam 6 različitih komentara na ovu temu.
And there are a lot of different opinions about this.
I postoje različita mišljenja na tu temu.
So what in the world is he talking about?
O čemu on ovdje govori?
Good eyes and bad eyes.
Dobro oko i loše oko.
Darkness and light.
Tama i svjetlost.
He says the eye is kind of like the window to the soul, to the heart.
On kaže da je oko kao prozor, kao svjetlost našem srcu.
You have a dirty window, dirty eyes, then inside is dark.
Ako imate prljave prozore i prljavo oko, unutra je tamna.
I'll just share my thinking, and maybe 60% of the scholars that I read say something like this.
Podijelit ću nešto što se 60% teologa slaže.
Jesus is still dealing with stuff and materialism, being drawn to things.
Isus se još uvijek nosi i radi na nama kada se radi o materijalnim stvarima na koje naše srce obraća pažnju.
You see, what we look at, what we give our attention to, really influences our investment.
Ono na što gledamo usmjerava našu pozornost na ono što ulažemo.
The people in the malls, the shopping malls, know about this.
Ljudi u shopping centrima znaju o tome.
Everything in the window looks so good.
Tamo sve izgleda tako lijepo.
And it's designed to kind of pull you in.
I dizajnirano je da vas povuče, da vas privuče.
They want you to look at their stuff.
Oni žele da gledate njihove stvari.
Because they want you to invest in that stuff.
Zato jer oni žele da vi investirate i ulažete u njihove stvari.
And sometimes, the more we look at stuff, the less time we have to fix our eyes on Jesus.
A nekad kada previše vremena ulažemo na stvari i razmišljamo o njima, imamo manje vremena da razmišljamo o Bogu.
Paul says we need to fix our hearts and our minds on things that are above.
Pavao kaže da trebamo usmjeriti naše oči, i srce na stvari koje su gore.
The eye, what you see, can really influence what you do.
Oko, ono što gledamo, zbilja može utjecati na ono što činimo.
In fact, we people who have sight, we depend upon our eyes to let us know where to walk.
Mi ljudi koji imamo vid, kada se krećemo, ovisimo o našem vidu da vidimo kuda hodamo.
We need our eyes to know how to drive.
Trebamo naše oči da vidimo kako voziti.
We need to be careful about the things we look at.
Moramo biti pažljivi zbog stvari na koje gledamo.
Jesus has already talked about how the eyes can cause us, if we're not careful, to commit adultery in our heart.
Isus nas također upozorava, ako nismo pažljivi, da naše oči mogu prouzročiti da napravimo prevaru.
But how is it that the eye is the window to the heart?
Kako to da su oči prozor srcu?
One scholar wrote this. He said, if a window is dirty or it's been colored or you can't get much light through it.
Jedan teolog je rekao, ako je prozor prljav, obojen ili ne može puno svjetlosti proći kroz njega.
And Paul writes that through Jesus Christ we've been transformed from the kingdom from the dominion of darkness into the kingdom of his light.
Pavao piše da smo transformirani iz kraljestva tame u kraljestvo svjetla.
But sometimes we begin to have our eyes, our windows pretty cloudy with stuff, maybe sin, a besetting sin in our life.
Ponekad su naše oči te naš prozor vrlo zamagljene sa našim grijehom s kojim se suočavamo.
Maybe it's greedy looking at things, wanting what they have and I don't have.
Možda smo pohlepni za stvarima koje oni imaju, a ja nemam.
It's not just what we see.
Nije samo ono što vidimo.
It's what we choose to keep looking at.
Nego ono na što odabiremo, što je naš odabir, na što ćemo nastaviti gledati.
Does that make sense?
Da li to ima smisla?
It's no wonder the writer of Hebrews says, fix your eyes on Jesus.
Nije ni čudo da je autor Hebrejima rekao da usmjerimo naše oči na Isusa.
He's the author and the finisher of your faith.
On je autor i početnik i završitelj naše vjere.
No one can cleanse the eye
Nitko ne može očistiti oči
like Jesus can.
kao što Isus to može učiniti.
And the eye, a clean eye, helps us to have a clean heart.
I čisto oko nam pomaže da imamo čisto srce.
I thought this week, even the last couple of days as I've been with Sandra, that psalm in the psalmist sings, creating me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me.
Ovih dana kada sam provodio vrijeme sa Sandrom, razmišljao sam o psalmu kada kaže stvori mi Bože čisto srce i obnovi duh u meni.
Lord, cleanse my eye.
Gospodine, očisti moje oči.
I want all of your light to come in
Želim da svo tvoje svjetlo dođe u mene.
so that I can see things clearly.
Tako da mogu vidjeti stvari jasnije.
You need to think about the passage and what it means to you.
Morate razmisliti o ovom dijelu i odjetku, što on zapravo znači vama.
But Jesus is not quite through with this money business. He has two more verses to talk about this.
Ali Isus još nije završio kada govori o novcu, on još ima neke stvari za spomenuti.
And he's talked about, where do you make your investment?
On govori gdje ulažemo.
I think he's talking about what do we choose to look at.
Ja mislim da govori o onome na što naša pažnja ide, što odlučimo gledati.
But then he brings it to a conclusion and he says, no one can serve two masters.
Ali tada dolazi do zaključka i kaže da nitko ne može služiti dva gospodara.
And he's specifically talking about money.
I on ovdje baš izrazito govori o novcu.
He says, you'll be devoted to one and you'll hate the other.
On kaže, bit ćete privrženi jednome, a drugoga ćete otići.
And he says, in case you don't quite know what I'm talking about,
I kaže, ako zaista niste shvatili o čemu govorim,
you cannot serve God and money.
ne možete služiti Bogu i novcu.
It's hard for people who have stuff and money to come to the Savior.
Teško je za ljude koji imaju srce smjereno na novac da dođu Bogu.
Because it just gets in the way.
Jer im taj novac dolazi na put.
Do you remember the rich man that came to Jesus and said, hey, what do? I want to go to the kingdom. I want to be part of the kingdom.
Sjećate se kada je bogataš došao do Isusa i rekao, htio bi doći u kraljestvo nebesko, što da učinim?
Jesus said, then keep the commandments.
Isus je rekao, izvrši zapovjedi.
The man said, and I think he really believed it, I'm keeping the commandments.
I vjerujem da čovjek zaista mislio i rekao, ja održavam sve zapovjedi.
But Jesus looked at the heart.
Ali Isus gleda u srce.
And he said, there's one thing you like.
I rekao jednu stvar.
Sell what you have and give it to the poor.
Prodaj sve što posjeduješ i daj siromašnima.
And then come follow him.
I onda mi možeš doći i slijediti me.
Wait a minute. That sounds like two things to me.
Pogledajte pažljivo, to zvuči kao da su
How
zapravo
about
dvije stvari.
to you?
A vama?
No, just one thing you like.
Ne, samo zapravo jedna stvar.
What does he lack? What is the one thing the man lacks?
Što je jedna stvar koju je čovjek volio?
What do you think?
Što mislite?
Money. His stuff was getting in the way.
Problem je da su njegove stvari njemu stale na putu.
In fact, the next verse says, he went away sorrowfully because he was a rich man.
I u sljedećem retku on kaže da je otišao žalosnog srca jer se nije htio toga odreći.
And then Jesus went on to say, in talking to his disciples, he said, it's very hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom.
I tada je Isus govorio svojim učenicima da je teško bogatašu ući u nebo.
Why?
Zašto?
Why is it so hard for rich men to enter the kingdom?
Zašto teško bogatašu ući u nebo?
Jel ga vuče to?
I think it's Peter. He says, we've given up everything to follow you.
Poslije Petar rekao, mi smo se svega odrekli da te slijedimo.
Jesus said, anything you give up now,
Isus je rekao, sve što se odreknete sada,
you'll get many times more,
dobit ćete puno više
and eternal life.
i naravno i vječni život.
You see, we have a gracious God, don't we?
Vidite, imamo milostivog Boga.
He doesn't want to deprive us, He wants to give to us.
On nas ne želi maknuti, on nam želi dati.
But if the stuff that we have received is more important than Him, we lose it all.
Ali ako su stvari koje smo dobili od njega važnije, tada gubimo njega.
One thing you lack,
Jedna stvar koja nedostaje vam,
you got to follow me.
morate ga slijediti.
And hey, I know what's in your way.
I znam što može biti na putu,
It's your stuff.
vaše stvari.
Sell it, give it away,
Prodate ih, dajte ih dalje
and follow me.
i slijedite mene.
Now, Jesus is not suggesting that we have to sell everything we have. Everybody has to do that.
On je sugerirao svima da prodaju sve što posjeduju.
When Paul writes to Timothy, he says that God has given us everything for our enjoyment.
Kada je Pavao pisao Timoteju, rekao da nam je Bog dao sve kako bismo mogli uživati.
But we don't serve money. We don't serve stuff. We serve Jesus. And only by serving Him can we know life.
Mi ne služimo novcu, mi služimo Isusu i samo njemu trebamo služiti.
Speaks to the heart.
Govori srcu ovdje.
You can have stuff and enjoy it.
Možete imati stvari i uživati u njima,
But hold on to it lightly and be willing to turn it loose.
ali ako ih se prečvrsto držite, možda ćete se okrenuti od Boga.
Yes.
Da?
A ja bih htio samo komentirati
Only an example of His Spirit and His heart.
Ja ne dajem samo ovdje primjer o njemu, nego o njegovom duhu.
Okay.
I
Yes,
srcu.
please, Steve.
I think that
The sinful nature.
Pavao kada govori o grešnoj naravi,
He mentions greed.
on spominje kada smo pohlepni,
That is, I just want more.
kada želimo sve više i više.
And then he says, by the way, that is idolatry.
I on kaže, to je idolopoklonstvo.
See, anything that's more important to you than you're in Jesus and following Him becomes an idol.
Sve što vam je važnije od toga da slijedite Isusa postaje idol.
That's why Jesus said, you really can't serve two masters,
Zato Isus kaže, ne možete služiti dva gospodara.
because ultimately you will love one and hate the other, you'll hate one and love the other. You have to make the choice what's most important to you.
Jer ćete na kraju jednog voljeti, a drugog mrziti i na kraju morate donijeti odluku.
Now remember, there is nothing wrong with stuff.
Upamtite, ništa nema loše da imate stvari.
There's nothing wrong with having a house.
Ništa nije loše u tome da imate kuću.
There's nothing wrong with having a fishing boat. My friend that I mentioned a minute ago, he has a boat now.
Nije ništa loše u tome da imate brod. Prijatelj kojeg sam ranije spomenuo u
He's
priču,
fishing
ima brod.
again. He's fishing
Sada
again.
i dalje ide u ribolov.
But he says, how can I use my boat and my fishing to invest in the kingdom?
Ali sada rekao kako ja mogu to vrijeme kada sam u ribolovu i kada se time bavim investirati u Božje kraljstvo.
And God has used that. He's brought people to faith who are interested in the same thing he's interested in.
I Bog je koristio to na način da je te ljude koji su s njim bili u ribolovu, koji su voljeli iste stvari kao on, na taj način ih je privukao Kristu.
But he said the same thing Steve did. He said, I have to learn to hold it very lightly and be willing to turn loose.
Ali on je isto rekao, pošto je Steve ranije spomenuo, da mora biti spreman dati sve, bez zadrške.
Sandra, you had something to say.
Well, I was just
Sandra?
thinking, you might mention the example of Matthew when Jesus called him. He'd given up a lot to be a tax collector, so his income and his job was important, but he left it all. So the call is the same for all of us.
Sandra je spomenula primjer Mateja, kada ga je Bog zvao da se odrekne svoga, onoga što čini i da ode i slijedi njega.
Here, James and John left their fishing nets.
Ivan i Jakov su se odrekli ribarenja i otišli za njim.
Again, we don't have to walk away from everything. It is that we have to hold it lightly. And Jesus, whatever stands in the way, he must come first.
Ne trebamo se svega odreći, nego trebamo se maknuti od onoga što nas drži prečvrsto za neke stvari.
Now, right after he says this,
Nakon što je to rekao,
I think he addresses maybe what must have been going on in the hearts of the disciples.
mislim da je govorio o investiranju, onome što se motalo po glavama Isusovih učenika.
He says in verse 25 through 27,
On kaže u 6:25 do 27.
he says, I'll read it in English first and then she'll read it. Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life or what you're going to eat or drink or about your body or what you're going to wear. Is not life more important than food and the body more important than clothes? Look at the birds. They don't sow, they don't reap, they don't store away in barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than they? Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life?
Zbog toga vam kažem, ne brinite se za svoj život, što ćete jesti i što ćete piti, ni za tijelo svoje, u što ćete se odjenuti. Nije li život više od jela i tijelo od ruha? Pogledajte ptice nebeske, ne siju, ne žanju, ni sabiru u žitnice, a vaš ih Otac nebeski hrani. Niste li vi mnogo vrijedniji od njih? A tko od vas brinući se može stasu svojemu dodati jedan lakat?
I'm sure they were thinking to themselves, hey, if I follow you, who's going to take care of me?
Sigurna sam da im je prošlo kroz hej, ako mi slijedimo tebe, ko će se pobrinuti za nas?
And so what Jesus is saying to his disciples, I want you to quit being anxious about your life.
Isus je rekao svojim učenicima da žele da prekinu biti zabrinuti za svoje živote.
Now he addresses three very fundamental cares or concerns that human beings have.
On ovdje oslovljava tri vrlo važne stvari.
And he says these are the things that the pagans run after.
I on kaže, ovo su stvari za kojima trče pogani.
And those who finally are able to get it all, it doesn't satisfy.
I oni koji dobiju priliku da dođu do tih stvari, na kraju to ne zadovoljava.
And sometimes they even take their own life.
Ponekad to oduzme njihov vlastni život.
Because when they have it all, they discover that it's just empty.
Jer kad sve dobiju, shvate da je na kraju prazno.
In these 10 verses from beginning with this verse 25 down through 34, 5 times Jesus will say, do not worry.
U ovih 10 redaka, počeći od 25 do 34, 5 puta Isus govori ne brinite.
And the word that he used literally means to be anxious, to be overly concerned about.
I riječ koju koristi je da ne budete uznemireni, da ne budete previše zabrinuti.
And the first thing he says is, hey, I want you to think about the birds.
I prva stvar koju kaže da razmotrite ptice.
Now, every one of these birds are the birds that are in Israel. I was careful to make sure that I found the birds that Jesus saw and the disciples knew.
I sve ove ptice sa slike su u Izraelu. Ja sam bio jako zabrinut da nađem ptice koje je Isus vidio u Izraelu.
Some of them are beautiful.
Neke njih su vrlo lijepe.
Some of them are very valuable.
Neke su vrlo vrijedne.
But the one up there in the middle is just a sparrow.
A ova u sredini je govica.
I mean,
Kako? Vrabac.
he is so unimportant that two of them are worth less than a penny.
One su toliko nebitne da ne vrijede puno.
And Jesus specifically speaks about those.
I Isus se zapravo ovdje poziva na te.
He says, if your heavenly Father can feed and take care of them,
Ako vaš nebeski otac ih može nahraniti i zauzeti se za njih,
don't you think he can feed and take care of you?
zar ne mislite da se može pobrinuti za vas i nahraniti vas?
Now, something that I need to call your attention to.
Želim vam na nešto skrenuti pozornost.
Jesus is not suggesting that we just go home and open our mouths and say, feed me.
Isus ne sugerira ovdje da odemo kući, otvorimo svoja usta i kaže nahrani me.
I looked up about the sparrow.
Gledao sam ovog vrapca.
Bird watchers say that perhaps there is no bird that works harder for his food.
Promatrači ptica kažu da ne postoji ptica koja radi na teži način nego što to radi vrabac.
And they eat their weight every week.
I oni čekaju svaki tjedan kada traže hranu.
Pojedu svoju težinu tjedno.
But God makes all that possible.
Ali Bog to sve čini mogućim.
He takes care of it.
On se za to pobrine.
And the idea that Jesus is trying to say is, listen, if these sparrows that are so common and so plentiful and kind of not so valuable, you are very valuable. Don't you think your Father can take care of you?
On kaže, ako ti vrapci nisu toliko vrijedni kao što ste vi ljudi vrijedni, zar ne mislite da se vaš nebeski otac može pobrinuti za vas?
You see, birds can fly and they can find their food and God provides the food. They stay busy, it's okay. You need to stay busy.
Ptice lete, one su zaposlene, uvijek traže hranu i vi isto tako trebate ostati zaposleni.
There were some brothers and sisters in Thessalonica that kind of took this to heart and they were just sitting around expecting the church to take care of them.
Postoje neka braća i sestre koje su uzeli ovo za doslovno i samo su stajali i htjeli su da se crkva pobrine za njih.
Jesus says, Paul wrote, if they're not willing to work, just don't feed them.
A Pavao im je pisao, ako nisu spremni raditi, nemojte ih hraniti.
But Jesus is saying, I will take care of you, I'll give you what you need, I'll give you the ability, I will provide. Just trust me.
A Isus je rekao, ja ću se zauzeti za vas, dati vam sposobnost, samo mi vjerujte.
And I want to think that when he's teaching, it's springtime.
I mislim da je, kada on to podučavao, bilo je proljetno vrijeme.
Jesus said, take a look. My translation says the lilies of the field, but the truth is, it's this particular kind of flower that the Greek is
Mislim
talking
da u
about.
mom prijevodu kaže ljiljani u polju, ali ovo cvijeće na slici.
In early spring, the fields just got covered with these kind of flowers just like this.
Ali u rano proljeće polja su prekrivena ovom vrstom cvijeća.
They're beautiful. They're scarlet and then they're white kind of on the inside and they're lovely, lovely flowers.
To je prekrasno cvijeće koje ima nešto bijelo između.
Jesus said, now why do you worry about clothes?
Isus je rekao, ne trebate se brinuti za odjeću.
Look at the flowers.
Pogledajte cvijeće.
They don't spin, they don't labor or spin, yet I tell you that even Solomon was not as beautiful, as splendor, or as dressed like these.
Rekao da se one ne brinu, čak se ni Salomon u svoje slavi nije zagrnuo kao jedan od njih.
He says, if God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today, and tomorrow is just thrown into the fire, how much more will he clothe you?
Pa ako travu poljsku koju danas jest, a sutra se u peć baca, Bog tako odjeva, neće li još više vas malo vjeriti?
And then, boy, these words really penetrate.
I ove riječi su zbilja ušle u mene.
He says, oh, you of little faith.
Kada je rekao ovi malovjerni.
You see, worry,
Pogledajte briga, zabrinutost.
being anxious about what we're going to eat, drink, or clothes we're going to wear, these are all stuff pagans run after.
Vidite stvari kada se previše brinemo onome što ćemo pojesti, popiti, odjenuti, to su sve stvari po kojih se pogani brinu.
Now, if you mark in your Bible, you need to mark these words.
Ako nešto bilježite i podcrtavate vaše Biblije, ovo trebate podcrtati.
Your heavenly Father knows that you need them.
Vaš nebeski Otac zna da vam je to potrebno.
He really does know.
On to zna.
He knows what you need,
On zna što vi trebate.
just like he knows what the birds need.
Baš kao što zna što ptice trebaju.
Just like he knows what makes the flowers beautiful and the landscape gorgeous in springtime in Galilee.
Baš kao što je znao u Galileji kako je poljsko cvijeće potrebno da mi uživamo.
He's saying you need from the heart
On zna vaše potrebe i srca,
to trust a Father who cares.
da vjerujete Ocu koji se brine za vas.
Believe that he knows what you need.
Vjerujte mu da on zna što vi trebate.
He really knows what you need.
On zaista zna što vi trebate.
Now, sometimes the cares are not necessarily about food or drink or clothes.
Ponekad briga nije samo za jelo, piće i odjeću.
Sometimes there are other kinds of cares.
Ponekad imamo neke druge brige.
Sometimes there are other kinds of burdens.
Ponekad imamo neka druga bremena.
Sometimes he knows our gifts, our abilities, and we want to use them in the right way.
On zna naše sposobnosti, naše darove i zna da ih želimo koristiti na pravi način.
But I want to point you to two words. First, Peter must have remembered this. If you have it in your notes, you need to write down 1 Peter chapter 4,
Ako
verse
imate
7.
svoje bilješke, možete zabilježiti prvu Petrovu 4, read verse.
Verse 7 chapter 5, I'm sorry.
Znači, poglavlje 5, ispravlja se 7.
Now he's particularly talking in this context to young men.
On ovdje u ovom tekstu govori mladom čovjeku.
Maybe young men who have a family. They're worried about taking care of them. I don't know.
Možda mladom čovjeku koji se pobrinuo za njega, nisam siguran.
Maybe he's talking about young men who really have strong ideas and feel like they've got to promote their ideas, because he talks about humble yourselves before the Lord.
Možda govori čovjeku koji ima velike ideje, jer ovdje govori ponizite se.
But whatever the context, whether we're old or young, look at verse 7.
Pogledajte, bez obzira na kontekst, pogledajte redak 7.
Same word. Cast all your anxieties or worries on him because he cares for you.
On kaže da stavite sve svoje brige na njega, jer on će se pobrinuti za vas.
Much more than he cares for the birds.
Mnogo više nego što brine za ptice.
You're more valuable to him.
Mnogo ste vrijedni od ptica.
You are his precious thing.
Vi ste njegovi dragocjeni.
I mean, he sent his son to die for you just so you could be part of the kingdom.
On je poslao sina da umre za vas kako biste mogli biti dio Božeg kraljevstva.
He wanted to eliminate the barrier, the sin problem. He let Jesus pay the price of your sin so that you could have fellowship with him and call him Father.
On želi srušiti granicu između vas i Isusa tako da ga je poslao na križ da pati za vas.
And he cares for you.
On brine za vas.
This week, I had to be reminded of this.
Ovaj tjedan sam se ponovo toga trebao prisjetiti.
I guess we all have to be reminded of it over and over again, don't we?
Pretpostavljam da se svi trebamo iznova toga prisjetiti.
I'm sure that Peter was remembering the words of Jesus as he wrote this.
Vjerujem da se Petar podsjećao Isusovih riječi kada je ovo pisao.
Now, Paul did not get to hear the words of Jesus that we're studying. He perhaps heard them from one of the apostles.
Pavao nije čuo neka od Isusovih riječi, možda ih je čuo od Isusovih učenika.
But turn to Philippians chapter 4,
Poslanica Filipljanima 4. poglavlje,
verse 6.
4.6, 6. redak.
Very instructive.
To je jedno vrlo značajni redak gdje vam daje uputu.
Do not be anxious about anything.
Nemojte se brinuti ni za što.
Same word.
Ista riječ.
We looked at worry, now it's anxious, but it's the same Greek word.
Pogledali smo i worry, anxious, znači brigu i anksioznost, dolazi od istog korijena grčke riječi.
Don't be anxious about anything, but instead, in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God.
Nemojte brinuti ni za što, nego u svemu sa molitvom i zahvalnošću predstavljate svoje potrebe Bogu.
Several things here.
Ovdje postoje nekoliko stvari.
We're to present our request, our burden.
Moramo predstaviti svoja bremena, svoje brige Bogu.
But he says, in everything with this prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God.
Ali kaže da uvijek dolazimo sa molitvom i zahvalnošću pred Boga.
Thanking God for what we do have.
Moramo zahvaliti Bogu na onome što imamo.
Learning, like Paul said, learning to be content in terms of stuff, being content with what God has given us.
Pavao je rekao da moramo naučiti biti zadovoljni sa stvarima koje imamo.
Or if it's in talent, being content with what the talent God has given us.
Ili ako se radi o talentu, moramo biti zadovoljni sa talentom koje smo dobili.
Or if it is responsibility, being content with that responsibility.
Ili odgovornost, trebamo biti zahvalni na odgovornosti.
Not just content, but thanking God for whatever He's provided for us.
Ne samo biti zadovoljni, nego zahvaljivati Bogu na onome što nam pruža.
The birds are beginning to come in Jagnich Dole where I live.
Ptice su počele dolaziti u Jagnich Dolu, tamo gdje ja živim.
I'm so deaf, it takes a lot of them for me to be able to hear them.
Ja sam gluh, pa ponekad je potrebno mnogo da ih čujem.
But I was thinking, as the sparrows and the other birds are chirping, they're chirping their thanksgiving to God.
Pomislio sam da li vrapci zahvaljuju Bogu.
I want to be like a bird.
Ja želim biti poput ptice.
With thanksgiving, present your request and prayers to God.
Sa zahvalnošću predstavite svoje potrebe Bogu.
And somehow I think, well, Paul says, and then the peace of God that transcends all understanding will guard your hearts and minds.
I tada Pavao kaže da mir koji nadilazi razum će zakupiti vaše srce.
So, the solution to worry, after he just asked us to be sure that we're investing in the kingdom and don't be worried about having enough and getting more. Right after that, he says, don't be anxious.
Kao odgovor na to, o toj brizi, rekao je nemojte biti nezadovoljni, nemojte brinuti previše.
Instead, the instruction is to consider or think.
Umjesto toga uputa je da razmislite, razmotrite.
Think about God's care.
Razmislite o Božoj brizi.
Think about the time that God has given us.
Razmislite o vremenu koje nam je Bog dao.
Think about not acting like pagans.
Razmislite o tome da se ne ponašate kao pogani.
Running after the latest and the best and the new and all of that and wanting more.
Da ne trčite za najnovijim, posljednim stvarima. Da ne želite uvijek sve novo.
Instead, he says, trust your heavenly Father.
Umjesto toga kaže vjerujte svom nebeskom Ocu.
And he's going to sum all of what he has said in chapter 5 and chapter 6 in verse 33.
Sve to možete naći u poglavljima 5 i 6 u retku 33.
And he speaks to those of us who are Jesus followers.
I on govori o nama koji smo Isusovi sljedbenici.
There's instruction and then there's promise.
Postoji uputa i obećanje.
But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness.
Tražite prvo kraljevstvo i njegovu pravednost.
That's what we run after.
Za time trebamo trčati.
I want to know you better. I want to serve you better.
Želim ga slijediti bolje.
I want to invest in things that are going to last for eternity.
Želim uložiti u stvari koje će trajati za vječnost.
And that's primarily people, I think.
I mislim da se ovdje govori o ljudima.
And that's also a Christ-like character.
I to je Kristolik karakter.
I want to seek first his kingdom and his righteousness.
Želim prvo tražiti njegovo kraljevstvo i pravednost.
He says this is what must be number one in your life.
On je rekao da treba biti na prvom mjestu u vašim životima.
There's no discipleship. There's no Jesus following if this is not part of our life.
Ne postoji učeništvo, niste Kristovi učenici ako to nije dio vaših života.
And then there's the promise.
I postoji obećanje.
And all these things, all the things that we need, all the things that we think are important, everything he says will be given to you as well.
I u tom obećanju govori o svim stvarima koje trebate, bit će vam dane.
See, you just can't outgive God.
Ne možete nadići Boga, ne možete mu previše dati.
You really can't.
Zaista ne možete.
The more you give, the more the emptier you are, and he's just going to give it back, and he's going to help you to grow so you get more, so you can give it all away some more.
Što više dajete, on će vam pomoći da imate još više i tada ćete još davati.
And all of these things
I sve te stvari
will be given you as well.
će vam biti nadodane.
Be careful.
Budite pažljivi.
It's not some sort of transaction. You're not saying, oh, okay, God, I'm going to give it all away so you give me a lot more.
Tu se ne radi o transakciji. Ne možete reći, ok, Bože, ja ću dati sve, pa mi ti moraš dati više.
See, that's coming back focusing on us.
Vidite, ovdje se vraća fokus na nas.
That's exposing a selfish heart.
To je kada do izražaja dolazi naše sebično srce.
He just says, seek kingdom and the righteousness of God, and I promise you, you're going to have everything you need.
On kaže, tražite kraljevstvo i pravednost i sve ostalo što trebate će vam se nadodati.
Maybe not everything you want,
Možda ne ono sve što želite,
because your want may not be altogether good for you.
jer ono što želite možda nije najbolje za vas,
But all that you need,
ali dobit ćete sve što trebate.
because you have a Father, he says earlier in this chapter,
Jer ranije u ovom poglavlju kaže imate Oca
cares for you.
koji se brine za vas.
Believe that?
Da li vjerujete u to?
Really?
Zaista?
Enough to make your investment in the kingdom?
Zaista da ulažete u kraljevstvo?
What does it look like in your involvement in church or in ministry?
Kako to izgleda kada ste uključeni u rad crkve, u vašoj službi?
Is it just one of the many things that you do, or is it what's really important to you?
Je li to jedna od mnogih stvari koje činite?
If it's in the organization, it's wrong. It's in the kingdom, you understand?
Ako smatrate da je to samo organizacija, to je pogrešno, radi se o kraljevstvu.
I don't want to cheapen it at all, but I think we are called to examine all that we're doing and all that we're investing in and the way we're investing to see if it is really seeking the kingdom and His righteousness.
Moramo procijeniti sve što činimo i u sve što ulažemo, je li ulažemo u kraljevstvo.
And what it looks like for Jerry may not at all look like what it looks like for Erwin.
Ono što možda Jerry radi, možda nije isto što i Erwin radi.
And what it looks like for Yvonne may not at all be what it looks like for Željko.
Ono što možda Ivan čini ne može biti isto za Željka.
I mean in the specifics.
Mislim na specifičan način.
But when you look at it in the bigger picture,
ali kada pogledate veću sliku,
it really does look the same.
Zaista izgleda isto.
Because it's all about seeking the kingdom.
Jer se ovdje radi o traženju kraljstva.
And His righteousness.
I njegove pravednosti.
In our character and the character of others.
I u našem karakteru i u karakteru drugih.
And then there's this unbelievable promise.
I postoji ovdje nevjerojatno obećanje.
That everything else that we need will be given to us as well.
Da sve ostalo što nam je potrebno bit će nam nadodano.
So in case the disciples missed it, Jesus says it one more time in verse 34.
Ako se pomisli da su učenici to možda propustili, on je to još jednom ponovio u retku 34.
Therefore don't worry about tomorrow.
Dakle, ne budite zabrinuti za sutra.
Because tomorrow is going to have enough worries of its own.
Jer sutra će se pobrinuti za svoje.
Truth is, each day has enough trouble for its own.
Dosta je svakom danu zloće njegove.
So just keep your eyes on Jesus.
Samo usmjerite svoje oči na Isusa.
Stay busy.
Ostanite zaposleni.
Just make sure that your busyness is to glorify Him.
Samo budite obzirni prema tome da vaša zaposlenost slavi Oca.
Whether it's just opening your home to make people feel good, like Boris does.
Možda je to kao što Boris čini, da otvorite svoj dom ljudima, da se oni dobro osjećaju.
Or it's helping those children to really love God.
Ili kad pomažete djeci da vole Boga.
Whether it's figuring out how to have a life together.
Ili kada želite saditi kako živjeti zajedno.
It's all about giving that to the Lord and let Him invest it in kingdom stuff.
Radi se o tome da sve date Bogu i da ulažete u kraljevstvo.
Now that we've got that covered, He's going to really begin to speak to some real challenges for us in chapter 7.
Kad smo ovo sve pokrili, vidjet ćemo neke izazove u kojima govori nama u poglavlju 7.
It's like one guy said, you stop preaching and go to meddling. That's what Jesus is going to do in chapter 7.
Vidjet ćemo u poglavlju 7. Can you repeat? Sorry. Can you repeat the last sentence?
I said, next week we're going to look at what Jesus has to say, and He's going to speak to some tough stuff.
Isus će u poglavlju 7 govoriti o nekim teškim stvarima.
Read ahead.
Pročitajte unaprijed.
Also think about what we've talked about this week and see through the week if Jesus is not speaking to you in a very personal way about your investment, about worry, about what your eyes are looking at.
Pogledajte kada smo ovaj tjedan radili ove odjeljke, što vam Isus govori, što vi ulažete.
And maybe you'll share it with us next week.
I možda ćete podijeliti s nama to sljedeći puta.
Bye bye.
Hvala.